Alright, hello to anyone out there who may be watching this. Whoever you are, wherever you are, whenever you're watching this, thank you for taking the time to click on the video. This is going to be the first discussion-based video that I'm going to put up on my YouTube channel, Ali511. The first one that I've made in like 5 or 6 months. So, hopefully I can get back into doing more of these kind of videos where I talk on camera about something that I have on my mind that I want to talk about, and I hope that other people will find interesting or intriguing. What I'm going to talk about today is I'm going to try my best to give a thorough breakdown of my entire history listening to music, like throughout my whole life, what I've listened to over time, what has changed, hang on just a second. I'm going to fix the camera slightly. So I'm going to zoom in. Alright, I just angled it up a little bit. Okay, so here's like my history with music. So when I was a little kid, I don't know about you guys, but I had no control over what music I wanted to listen to when I was a little kid, because you basically just listen to whatever music your parents have playing in the house or that they're playing in the car or something like that. Like whatever your family's listening to, that's kind of what you're forced to listen to almost as a kid. My dad used to make these CD mixes where he would take his favorite songs, and this was in like the late 90s, early 2000s. For those who don't know, I was born in 1994. I'm 24 years old. So, you know, my dad would burn songs onto CDs, and some of the bands that I remember listening to when we would maybe go on like a family vacation or something like that he would play in the car. Some of those bands were Sting, John Mellencamp, Bruce Springsteen, The Police, Peter Gabriel, REM, a little bit of the Beatles, Squeeze, and then like a little bit of the 90s stuff like Sugar Ray. I remember he would play that stuff in the car, and he knows a lot of other bands too, like The Who, the Psychedelic Furs, which is like a random band that I actually saw with my dad about a year and a half, 2 years ago. Was just like a random band he was into. So those were the bands that stuck with me, that I still listen to this day, that my dad put on his CD mixes that we would listen to in the car as a family. As far as stuff my mom listened to, when I was homeschooled for 3 years as a kid, in kindergarten, first grade, second grade. So we would listen to my dad's CD mixes in the car, or like the radio, stuff like that. When I was at home and my dad was at work, my mom would put on music in the kitchen. There's the song by Bob Marley, "Don't Worry About a Thing, 'Cause Every Little Thing's Gonna Be Alright." I remember my mom playing that, and then she also played a lot of like, I guess like Hispanic, Caribbean, like African kind of instrumental music that was sort of like uplifting and peaceful and kind of like this kumbaya type of music. And my mom would play that stuff around the house when we were homeschooled, me and my siblings. My sister was obsessed with Michael Jackson. She still is a big fan of Michael Jackson, but I just remember she was obsessed with him. So not only as an artist, but as a person, she was obsessed with him. So I remember getting exposed to that a little bit. I remember the movie Free Willy. Michael Jackson had a song in that movie, and my sister loved that movie. So I remember like hearing that song in the movie and stuff. And, I remember at one point I told myself I did not like Michael Jackson just because my sister liked Michael Jackson. I was like, that's my sister's thing. I can't like what my sister likes. You know, stupid kid logic that I had. Yeah, so I was really into Michael Jackson at one point. Then, you know, so that's kind of the stuff I was exposed to as a kid. Once I got into middle school, which was around 2005, 2006, that's when I started kind of deciding my own music that I wanted to listen to. And I was listening to like a lot of WWE stuff, like wrestling stuff. So like theme songs of WWE superstars, like when they would walk out to the ring, what songs would be playing in the background, or like promotional songs that they would do for like pay-per-views and events, which would be bands like Drowning Pool, Saliva, maybe something like Godsmack, something like that, was what was being played at the, you know, with the WWE events. And then also like the wrestling video games had their own soundtracks where they would play like Rise Against and stuff like that. So I was getting into that stuff a little bit in 2006, 2005. I actually remember I had this CD that me and my friend would listen to on the way to bowling in the morning, because we were on a bowling team in middle school, and it had 3 songs on it. It had Always by Saliva, Can't Touch This by MC Hammer, and Shane McMahon's theme song from wrestling. So that was, and we would just play that like over and over, those same 3 songs, and you know, just getting really into like the wrestling music and stuff. And then around 2006, 2007, I found hip hop music. And the reason I found it was because of Weird Al Yankovic had the song Couch Potato, which is a parody of Eminem's Lose Yourself. Now, before that point, I think I may have heard Lose Yourself, but when Eminem came out, I was so young at the time, and I came from like a sheltered house, kind of, so I think Lose Yourself may have come on the radio when I was a little kid, but my parents would just shut it off right away, you know, because this is like rap music. We don't want 8-year-old Ollie listening to rap, so, you know. So I don't know if I had heard Lose Yourself before then, but I was over at a friend's house and I heard Couch Potato, which is the parody of Eminem's Lose Yourself, and I was like, I like the beats of this. And I remember going home and thinking, let me look up the original song that this is the parody of. And I looked up Lose Yourself on YouTube in like 2006, 2007. And I was like, man, like, this is like so cool to me. You know, it felt like an epiphany. I had never been exposed to rap music before then. So I have this specific memory of around 2006, 2007, going to the grocery store with my sister, and she had an iPod at the time. I didn't have an iPod. And I remember I'm like, hey Sam's my sister, I'm like, do you know the song Lose Yourself by Eminem? And she's like, yeah, like, I feel like everyone knows that song. And she's like, I got it on my iPod. And so I listened to it, and I just remember listening to it over and over on the way to the grocery store, on the way back. And I was like, man, like, this is awesome. Like, you know, 13-year-old Ollie was like really into that. And then I also got into rap music because around, you know, rap music just over time has gotten popular. And right now, it's 2018, rap's the biggest genre in the world. You know, it kind of blends in with pop music. That's how big rap is. It's like rap is almost pop in a way today. Whereas back in the 80s and 90s, when rap was kind of on the come up, a lot of like people who come from where I come from, which I'm a white boy from the suburbs, we weren't listening to rap. You know, like people back in those days weren't listening to rap. They thought, oh, that's black people music, or that's music that you hear in urban environments or at basketball games or something. But, you know, and that's what people thought in like the 80s, 90s. Then, you know, I hear about this music in like 2006, 2007. I'm like, man, like, I need to get more into this stuff. So at the time, rap was kind of in a weird place. You had Soulja Boy, who came out, and you know, I like the beats that Soulja Boy was going over, and it's fun, like the dance music, crank that, you know. And so as a kid in middle school, I thought that stuff was fun. Also, there's the song "It's Going Down" by Young Jock, which was like huge in terms of music that I was into at the time and songs that I really listened to. And then like around 2008, 2009, I started getting into high school, and Lil Wayne was big. He dropped the Carter 3, and Drake had just blown up. So I was really into Lil Wayne, really into Drake, really into Eminem, and so in June 2010, or like summer 2010, Eminem dropped Recovery, and there's a lot of good songs on that album in my opinion. The most popular ones are Not Afraid, Love the Way You Lie, stuff like that, and that up until that point, again, I kind of started learning about Eminem in 2006, 2007. Between then and 2010, I would hear Eminem songs here and there, but I was never like a huge Eminem fan. And then when Eminem dropped Recovery, I was like, wow, this is really good. I should go back and listen to all the other Eminem stuff. And then I was like, whoa, like, his older stuff is real, and it's dark, and there's a lot of, and it's angry, and he's saying a lot of crazy stuff. So I went back and I even listened to like Infinite. And again, this is like in high school around 2010. So Infinite was Eminem's first album. I remember listening to that, really getting into it. And, you know, so I became a huge Eminem fan. And in high school, Eminem was like my favorite artist. I think to this day I have more Eminem songs on my phone than any other music artist, because he's put out so much work at this point. Anyway, at the end of 2010, around October, I found out about Hopsin, and he had just put out the video "Sag My Pants," which came out around the time, and Hopsin was getting ready to put out his album Raw the next month. And I remember finding out about this guy, and I was like, all I could think was, wow, this sounds so similar to the Eminem stuff I was listening to over the summer in 2010. So I found Hopsin, and I feel like Hopsin was like my Eminem, the same way that kids who were born like in the mid to late 80s, when they were in like high school, Eminem was like everywhere. He was huge, like in the early 2000s, but I was so young at the time that I didn't get to experience Eminem in that way. So for me, Hopsin was like my Eminem. In fact, people have called Hopsin Black Eminem before, because Hopsin has said he's very influenced by Eminem. So I heard the album Raw, and Hopsin has put out 3 albums since Raw, and to this day, I think Raw is his best work. And the entire writing for that album, which is like a 70-minute album, is inspired by a screwed up situation that he went through where, you know, I'm not going to get too deep into it, but like, it was like he got screwed over by a record label and he felt betrayed. And that kind of lit the fire under him to make this incredible album called Raw, which is filled with a lot of pain and anger, where he feels like he should be famous, but he's not getting the credit he deserves and stuff like that. That's the stuff he talked about on the album. And that is like, you know, at the time, you could feel the pain through that album. And at the time, like, I felt like the more sad and the more angry I was getting, the better the album felt. You know how kids are in high school. That's just the way it is. So yeah, I was really into Hobson. You know, like really into Hobson, and you know, that's kind of what I was listening to in high school. I was also really into Hollywood Undead. In the same way I say Hobson was like my Eminem, Hollywood Undead was like my Linkin Park. You know, I was never a huge Linkin Park fan in the early 2000s when they were huge. I kind of missed that, again, because I was so young. And then I found out about Hollywood Undead, and I was like, yeah, Linkin Park's okay, but I'm really into this Hollywood Undead stuff. That's like what I thought when I was in high school. So, you know, up through high school, 2010, 2011, that's really what I was listening to, was the mainstream stuff like Lil Wayne, Drake. And again, this is all before mumble rap. So Lil Wayne, Drake, Eminem, Hobson, maybe a little bit of Tech Nine. I found Yellow Wolf in high school. And then like Hollywood Undead. Just all this stuff that I was finding on YouTube at the time. And what I'm going to do right now is I'm going to stop the video. And I'm going to I just want to make sure everything's going good on the camera. And I'm going to put up a part 2 of this. So stay tuned real quick for part 2. I'll see you then.